The pink and blue balloons felt like they were mocking me as I stood frozen in my own backyard, holding the divorce papers that my husband had just handed me in front of 30 guests. The gender reveal party we had planned for weeks was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives, but instead, it became the day my world completely fell apart. "You can't be serious, Tony," I whispered, my hands shaking as I stared at the legal documents. Our friends and family were still chatting and laughing around us, completely unaware that my marriage had just exploded like a bomb. Tony's face was cold, nothing like the man I had fallen in love with 5 years ago. "I'm serious, Layla. I can't do this anymore. I can't pretend to be happy when I'm not." The baby in my belly seemed to flutter as if sensing the chaos above. I was 6 months pregnant with our first child, glowing with the excitement of becoming a mother, and now my husband was destroying everything on what should have been our celebration day. "But the baby?" I started, my voice breaking. "The baby will be fine. We can work out custody later." His words were like ice, each one cutting deeper than the last. "I've already talked to a lawyer. Everything's in those papers." I looked around at our guests. My sister Emma was helping my mother set up the cake table, Tony's parents were talking to our neighbors, and everyone was waiting for us to reveal whether we were having a boy or girl. Instead, I was getting served divorce papers like I was some stranger on the street. "Why today?" I asked, fighting back tears. "Why would you do this today in front of everyone?" Tony shrugged, his hands in his pockets like this was just another Tuesday conversation. "I figured it was better to get it over with. No point in waiting." That's when I saw her. Standing by the fence, trying to look casual but failing miserably, was Rebecca from Tony's office. She was wearing a tight red dress and kept checking her phone, glancing over at us every few seconds. The pieces started falling into place like a puzzle I never wanted to solve. "She's here, isn't she?" I said, my voice getting stronger despite the pain crushing my chest. "Rebecca's here watching this whole thing." Tony's face gave him away before he could say anything. The slight flush, the way his eyes darted away from mine, the nervous swallow. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Not now. Not after this." I held up the papers, my hands steady now despite the storm raging inside me. "How long has this been going on? Layla, can we not do this here? We're doing this here because you chose to do this here." My voice was loud enough that a few people started looking our way. Emma noticed and started walking over, concern written all over her face. "Is everything okay?" Emma asked, reaching us just as Tony stepped back like he wanted to disappear. I looked at my sister, my best friend, the person who had helped me plan this entire party, and realized I had two choices. I could fall apart right here in front of everyone, or I could find a way to salvage what was left of my dignity. "Everything's perfect," I said, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack my face. "Tony just had some business to handle. Right, honey?" The fake sweetness in my voice made Tony uncomfortable, which was exactly what I wanted. He nodded quickly, shoving his hands deeper into his pockets. Emma looked between us, clearly not buying it, but before she could ask more questions, my mother called out from across the yard. "Layla. Tony. Come on, everyone's ready for the big reveal." I folded the divorce papers and slipped them into my purse, my mind racing. If Tony wanted to play games, if he wanted to humiliate me on what should have been one of the happiest days of my life, then he was about to learn that he had seriously underestimated me. "We should go," I said to Tony, my voice calm now. "Everyone's waiting." As we walked toward the crowd, I caught Rebecca trying to slip away through the side gate. But I saw her, and more importantly, I saw the satisfied smirk on her face. She thought she had won. They both did. They had no idea what they had just started. The gender reveal went on as planned. We cut the cake together, Tony's arm around my waist like we were the perfect happy couple. The inside was pink, we were having a girl. Everyone cheered and congratulated us, taking pictures and making toasts about our future family. I smiled and laughed and played the part perfectly, but inside I was planning. Every congratulation felt like a knife twist, every happy wish for our future felt like a cruel joke, and every time I caught sight of Rebecca lurking nearby, my resolve grew stronger. After the last guest left and we finished cleaning up, Tony disappeared upstairs without a word. I sat alone in my kitchen, surrounded by leftover pink cake and deflated balloons, staring at the divorce papers spread out on my table. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The papers were dated from 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. Which meant Tony had been planning this for almost a month, letting me organize this party, letting me buy decorations and plan menus and invite everyone we knew, all while he was getting ready to destroy me in the most public way possible. But there was something else in those papers that Tony probably thought I wouldn't understand. Financial documents, asset listings, custody arrangements that were already suspiciously detailed. It was like he had been planning this divorce for months, not weeks. I pulled out my laptop and started researching. By 3 in the morning, I had learned more about divorce law than I ever wanted to know. I also learned something else. Tony had been moving money around. Small amounts at first, but it added up. He was trying to hide assets before the divorce was finalized. As I finally went to bed, I realized something that would have scared me yesterday but felt empowering today. Tony thought he was so smart, planning his exit strategy and his new life with Rebecca. But he made one crucial mistake. He had no idea who he was really dealing with. The next morning, Tony acted like nothing had happened. He came downstairs in his usual work clothes, grabbed his coffee, and kissed my forehead like he had every morning for the past 5 years. "Morning, babe," he said, his voice casual as he scrolled through his phone. "Thanks for cleaning up yesterday. The party was nice." I stared at him from across the kitchen table, wondering if I was losing my mind. "Nice. Yeah, everyone seemed to have a good time." He looked up at me with those brown eyes that used to make my heart skip. Now they just made me angry. "You okay? You look tired." "I wonder why," I said, my voice flat. Tony frowned, tilting his head like a confused puppy. "What's that supposed to mean?" I couldn't believe it. He was actually going to pretend that yesterday didn't happen. That he hadn't handed me divorce papers in front of our family and friends. That he hadn't brought his girlfriend to watch the whole thing. "The divorce papers, Tony. Remember? The ones you gave me yesterday during our gender reveal party?" "Oh, right." He had the nerve to look embarrassed, like he had forgotten to take out the trash instead of destroying our marriage. "Look, I know the timing wasn't great, but I figured it was better to be honest." "Honest?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You call having an affair and planning to leave your pregnant wife honest?" "I never said I was having an affair." "You didn't have to. Rebecca was there yesterday, Tony. I saw her." Tony's face went red and he started stuttering like he used to when we first started dating, and he was nervous. Except now it wasn't cute. It was pathetic. "Rebecca and I are just friends. She came to support us." "Support us?" I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "She came to watch you humiliate me. There's a difference." Tony grabbed his keys and headed for the door. "I don't have time for this. We can talk about it tonight." "Don't bother coming home tonight," I called after him. "Or any night." The door slammed, and I was alone with the silence and the smell of his cologne lingering in the air. That's when the tears finally came. Not the pretty kind you see in movies, but the ugly, body-shaking kind that leave you exhausted and empty. But I only let myself cry for 10 minutes. Then I called my sister. "Emma, can you come over? I need help with something." She was there in 20 minutes with coffee and donuts, taking one look at my red eyes and pulling me into a hug. "What did that man do now?" she asked, and I told her everything. The divorce papers, Rebecca, the way Tony acted this morning like nothing happened. Emma listened without interrupting, her face getting angrier with every detail. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "So what's the plan?" she asked. "Plan? Layla, I've known you since you were born. You don't just take hits like this lying down. You're planning something. What is it?" I smiled for the first time since yesterday. Emma knew me better than anyone, including my husband. "I need to find a lawyer. A good one." "I know someone," Emma said immediately. "Remember my friend Sarah from college? She's a divorce attorney now and she's ruthless. Let me call her." While Emma made the call, I started packing. If Tony wanted me gone, I'd give him what he wanted, but I'd do it on my terms. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for him to decide my future. Sarah could see me that afternoon. Emma drove me to her office downtown, a sleek building that screamed success and money. Sarah looked exactly like I remembered from Emma's college photos, tall, confident, and sharp as a knife. "Tell me everything," Sarah said, pulling out a legal pad. I started from the beginning, showing her the divorce papers and explaining about the financial documents I'd found. Sarah's eyebrows went up when I mentioned the asset listings. "He's trying to hide money," she said, making notes. "This is good for us. Judges don't like it when spouses try to conceal assets during divorce proceedings. What can we do about it?" "A lot. But first, I need you to do something for me. Don't sign anything he gives you. Don't agree to anything verbally. And start documenting everything." "Documenting?" "Every conversation, every text message, every time he doesn't come home. If he's having an affair, we need proof. If he's hiding money, we need proof. If he's trying to manipulate you, we need proof." I left Sarah's office feeling something I hadn't felt since yesterday: hope. Not hope that Tony would come back because I didn't want him back. Hope that I could beat him at his own game. That evening, I moved into Emma's spare bedroom. Tony came home to find half my clothes gone and a note on the kitchen table. Since you want a divorce, I'm making it easier for you. My lawyer will be in touch. Layla. He called me 17 times that night. I didn't answer once. The next few days were a blur of lawyers and paperwork and phone calls. Tony kept trying to reach me, leaving messages that went from angry to confused to almost apologetic. But I remembered what Sarah said about documenting everything, so I saved every message, every text, every email. That's when I found something interesting. Tony had left his laptop open on the kitchen table before I moved out, and I had taken photos of everything I could see. One of those photos showed an email exchange between Tony and Rebecca that went back 6 months. 6 months. My husband had been planning to leave me since before I even got pregnant. But the emails revealed something else. Tony had been telling Rebecca that I was controlling, that I handled all our finances and he never had access to money. He painted me as some kind of money-hungry villain who kept him under my thumb. The truth was the opposite. Tony handled all our money because he said he was better with numbers. I had given him complete control of our finances because I trusted him. Now I realized that trust had been a mistake. Sarah was thrilled when I showed her the emails. "This is perfect," she said. "He's been planning this for months and lying to his girlfriend about why. Judges hate deception. What's our next move? We're going to request a full financial audit. Every bank account, every investment, every hidden asset. And then we're going to make sure you get everything you're entitled to." As I left Sarah's office that day, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. For the first time in my marriage, I wasn't just reacting to what Tony did. I was taking control. And this was just the beginning. 2 weeks after moving in with Emma, I was sitting in a coffee shop across from a woman who looked like she could be anyone's grandmother. Gray hair, kind eyes, cardigan sweater. But Linda Martinez was the best private investigator in the city, according to Sarah. "Your husband thinks he's smart," Linda said, stirring her tea. "They always do. But 25 years in this business has taught me that cheating spouses are usually pretty predictable." She slid a folder across the table. "This is what I found in just 1 week." I opened the folder and felt my stomach drop. Photos of Tony and Rebecca at restaurants, holding hands in the parking lot of her apartment building, kissing in his car. The timestamps showed they'd been together almost every day since I moved out. "How long do you think this has been going on?" I asked. "Based on what I've observed and the information you gave me about those emails, I'd say at least 8 months. Probably longer." 8 months. I was 4 months pregnant when this started. I had been so excited about the baby, about our future, while my husband was already planning his exit. "There's more," Linda said gently. "I followed the money trail like your lawyer requested." She pulled out bank statements and financial records that made my head spin. Tony had been moving money into accounts I didn't know existed. Small amounts at first, then larger ones as time went on. "He's got about $40,000 hidden in various accounts," Linda explained. "Plus he's been paying for Rebecca's rent for the past 3 months. Her rent. She moved into a nice apartment downtown right around the time the payment started. Coincidence? I don't think so." I stared at the papers trying to process everything. Tony had been using our money, the money I thought was going toward our baby's future, to set up a life with another woman. "The good news is this is all documented now," Linda continued. "Your lawyer will be able to use this in court. The bad news is there might be more we haven't found yet." "More?" "Credit cards, investments, maybe even property. Men like your husband don't usually stop at just hiding cash. They want to make sure they can live comfortably after the divorce while leaving their wives with as little as possible." I closed the folder, my hands shaking. "What do I do now?" "You let me keep digging. And you start thinking about what kind of life you want after this is all over." That night, I lay awake in Emma's guest room, staring at the ceiling and thinking about Linda's words. What kind of life did I want? For so long, my life had been about Tony. His career, his dreams, his plans. I had supported him through law school, worked 2 jobs so he could focus on his studies, moved across the country when he got his first big job. What did I want for myself? The baby kicked, reminding me that I wasn't just planning for myself anymore. I had a daughter to think about. A daughter who deserved better than watching her mother get walked all over. The next morning, I called Sarah with a new determination. "I want everything," I told her. "Every penny he tried to hide, every asset he thinks I don't know about. I want it all." Sarah laughed, but it wasn't a mean laugh. It was proud. "Now you're talking." Linda sent me her report. "We've got enough evidence to bury him." "Good. Because I've been thinking about something else. What's that? Tony works for Richardson and Associates, right? That big law firm downtown? Yes, why? They have a morality clause in their partnership contracts. I remember Tony mentioning it years ago. Something about how partners have to maintain certain standards of behavior to protect the firm's reputation. There was silence on the other end of the line, then Sarah started laughing again. Layla, you're brilliant. If we can show that Tony was having an affair while married and using firm resources or time for personal matters, we could get him in trouble at work too. More than trouble. We could potentially cost him his job. The thought should have made me sad. A year ago it would have. But now, after everything Tony had put me through, it felt like justice. There's something else, I said. Linda mentioned that Rebecca might be getting money from Tony. If he's been using our joint accounts to pay for her apartment. That's financial fraud in the context of a marriage. Oh, Layla, this keeps getting better. After I hung up with Sarah, I sat at Emma's kitchen table with my laptop, looking at our joint bank account statements online. Now that I knew what to look for, the patterns were obvious. Regular payments to RL Properties that I had never noticed before. When I Googled the company, I found out it was Rebecca's landlord. Tony had been paying his girlfriend's rent with our money for months. I made copies of everything and sent them to both Sarah and Linda. Then I did something I probably shouldn't have, but I couldn't help myself. I called Tony. Layla. He sounded surprised and hopeful. I've been trying to reach you. Can we talk? We're talking now. I mean in person. This whole thing has gotten out of hand. Maybe we can work something out. Work something out? The divorce doesn't have to be messy. We can keep it simple, split things fairly, figure out custody. No need for lawyers to get involved. I almost laughed. He had no idea that lawyers were already very involved. What about Rebecca? I asked. There was a long pause. What about her? Are you going to keep paying her rent, or is that coming out of your half of the assets? Another pause, longer this time. I don't know what you're talking about. RL Properties, Tony. Ring a bell? The silence stretched so long I thought he might have hung up. How did you? He started, then stopped. How did I find out that you've been using our money to pay for your girlfriend's apartment? Does it matter how I found out? Layla, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You've been planning this divorce for months, hiding money, moving assets, and using our joint accounts to set up your new life with Rebecca. Did I miss anything? We need to talk in person. No, we don't. My lawyer will be in touch. I hung up and immediately called Sarah to let her know that Tony was aware we were on to him. Good, she said. Let him panic. Panic people make mistakes, and mistakes help our case. That afternoon, Linda called with more news. Your husband just withdrew $15,000 in cash from one of those hidden accounts, she said. He's either planning to run or he's trying to move more money where we can't track it. Can he do that? Not legally. Once divorce proceedings start, both parties are supposed to maintain the status quo financially. He's violating that by moving large amounts of cash. So what do? We document it and add it to the list of things he'll have to explain to a judge. As I hung up the phone, I realized something had changed in me over the past few weeks. The woman who had stood in her backyard getting served divorce papers while pregnant was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who wasn't going to be a victim anymore. Tony wanted to play games? Fine. But he was about to find out that he wasn't the only one who could be strategic. And I was just getting started. A month into the divorce proceedings, I was sitting in Sarah's office looking at a stack of evidence that would make any prosecutor jealous. Bank statements, photos, email exchanges, witness statements. We had built an airtight case against Tony. He's getting desperate, Sarah said, pointing to the latest legal documents Tony's lawyer had filed. Look at these accusations. I read through the papers, my anger growing with each line. Tony was claiming that I was mentally unstable due to pregnancy hormones. He was saying I had become controlling and manipulative. He was even suggesting that I might not be fit to have primary custody of our daughter. Can he do this? I asked. He can try. But judges aren't stupid, and we have evidence that shows the timeline of events. You only became unstable after you found out about his affair and his hidden assets. That's not mental illness, that's a normal response to betrayal. What about the custody thing? Sarah smiled. That's actually going to backfire on him. We have documented proof that he's been planning to leave since before you got pregnant. No judge is going to give primary custody to a father who was planning to abandon his family before the child was even born. I leaned back in my chair, my hand on my belly. At 7 months pregnant, Everything was getting harder, walking, sleeping, even sitting in chairs. But my resolve was stronger than ever. "There's something else I need to tell you," I said. "What's that?" "I've been working on something. A project." For the past month, while Tony thought I was just sitting around feeling sorry for myself, I had been busy. Before I got married, I had a small online business selling handmade jewelry. Tony had convinced me to give it up when his career took off, saying we didn't need the extra income and it was taking time away from our relationship. But recently I had started it up again. And it was going better than ever. "I'm making about $3,000 a month now," I told Sarah. "And it's growing fast." Sarah's eyebrows went up. "That's significant income. How long has this been going on?" "I started again about 6 weeks ago, right after I moved out. I couldn't sleep, so I started making jewelry again. I posted some pieces online and they sold immediately. So I made more." "This is huge, Layla. Tony's been arguing that you can't support yourself financially, that you need alimony. But if you have your own income stream, I can take care of myself and my daughter." "Exactly. And it shows that you're not the unstable, dependent woman he's trying to paint you as." I pulled out my phone and showed Sarah my business Instagram account. Thousands of followers, hundreds of comments on each post, orders from all over the country. "I've been documenting everything," I said. "Sales records, profit margins, customer testimonials. This business could be worth a lot more than $3,000 a month if I had time to focus on it full time." Sarah was grinning now. "Oh, this is perfect. We're going to destroy his argument that you're financially dependent on him." After leaving Sarah's office, I drove to the coffee shop where I had first met Linda. She was already there, waiting with another folder. "More good news," she said as I sat down. "Your husband made another mistake." She opened the folder to reveal photos of Tony and Rebecca at an expensive restaurant downtown. The timestamp showed it was from last Tuesday. "So?" I asked. "Last Tuesday was the day he filed papers claiming financial hardship and asking for reduced alimony payments. He told the court he couldn't afford to maintain his current lifestyle while supporting you and the baby." I looked at the photos again. The restaurant was one of the most expensive in the city. The wine bottle on their table probably cost more than most people spend on groceries in a week. "He's lying to the court about his finances while spending hundreds of dollars on dinner with his girlfriend," Linda continued. "Judges really don't like that kind of deception." "Is there more?" "Oh, there's more." Rebecca posted these pictures on her social media. Linda showed me her phone with Rebecca's Instagram account. Photos from the expensive dinner, pictures of flowers Tony had sent to her office, even a photo of a diamond bracelet with the caption, "My man spoils me." She's posting evidence of his spending online? People in love do stupid things. And people having affairs think they're invisible. I scrolled through more of Rebecca's posts. Expensive clothes, fancy dinners, weekend trips to luxury hotels. All paid for by Tony while he was crying poverty to the divorce court. "There's something else," Linda said, lowering her voice. "I've been watching Rebecca's social media for weeks now, and I think I found something interesting." She showed me another photo, this one from 6 months ago. Rebecca and Tony at a company Christmas party, standing close together, his arm around her waist. This photo was posted in December. "You said Tony claimed their relationship started after you separated?" "He said they were just friends until recently." "This doesn't look like just friends to me." I stared at the photo, remembering that Christmas party. I had been sick with morning sickness and couldn't go. Tony had come home late, smelling like perfume, and told me he'd had to stay late to network with clients. He had been lying to me for so much longer than I thought. "There's one more thing," Linda said. I did some digging into Rebecca's background. "What did you find?" "She's done this before. 3 years ago, she was involved with another married man at a different law firm. It ended badly when his wife found out and made a complaint to the State Bar Association." The State Bar. Lawyers can get in serious trouble for behavior that reflects poorly on the profession. Having affairs with colleagues, especially when it involves lying and deception, can result in disciplinary action. I leaned back in my chair, processing everything. Tony wasn't just cheating on me, he was potentially destroying his career by getting involved with someone who had a history of causing problems for married lawyers. What do we do with this information? Your lawyer will know how to use it. The point is, your husband isn't as smart as he thinks he is. He's making mistakes left and right, and we're documenting all of them. That evening, I sat in Emma's living room working on jewelry while she made dinner. My business had grown so much that I was struggling to keep up with orders. It was a good problem to have. "You know what I love about this?" Emma said, watching me work. "You're building something that's completely yours. Tony can't touch it, can't control it, can't take it away from you. She was right. For the first time in years, I had something that belonged only to me. Something I had created with my own hands and my own creativity. My phone buzzed with a text from Tony. Please call me. We need to talk about the baby. I showed the message to Emma, who rolled her eyes. He's scared, she said. All that evidence is piling up and he knows he's in trouble. I deleted the message without responding. Tony had plenty of chances to talk about the baby before he decided to destroy our marriage. Now he could talk to my lawyer. Later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, I got a call from Sarah. Emergency hearing tomorrow, she said. Tony's lawyer is asking for an injunction to stop you from harassing him and Rebecca. Harassing them? What are they talking about? Apparently Rebecca is claiming that someone has been following her and taking pictures. She thinks it's you. I laughed. It's Linda, the private investigator. And it's completely legal. I know that and you know that, but they're trying to make you look like a crazy stalker ex-wife. Don't worry, we'll handle it. But this tells me they're getting desperate. Good. Let them be desperate. As I hung up the phone, I realized that tomorrow's hearing would be the first time I'd seen Tony since the day he served me divorce papers. I wondered if he would be surprised by the woman he'd see in court. Because the scared, broken woman from that day was gone. In her place was someone stronger, smarter, and ready to fight for everything she deserved. Tony was about to learn that he had seriously underestimated his wife. The courthouse was intimidating, all marble floors and high ceilings that made every sound echo. I sat next to Sarah at the plaintiff's table, my hands folded over my 8-month pregnant belly, watching Tony and his lawyer shuffle through papers at the other table. Tony looked terrible. His usually perfect hair was messy, his expensive suit was wrinkled, and he kept glancing over at me like he was seeing a ghost. Good. You should be nervous. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Chin, the bailiff announced. Judge Chin was a small woman with sharp eyes who looked like she had seen every trick in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. She reviewed the papers in front of her before looking up at both tables. This is a motion for a protective order, she said. Mr. Williams, you claim that your wife is harassing you and your friend. What evidence do you have of this harassment? Tony's lawyer stood up, a nervous man who kept adjusting his tie. Your Honor, my client's girlfriend has been followed and photographed repeatedly. She fears for her safety. Has anyone threatened her physically? Well, no, but has anyone attempted to contact her directly? Not exactly, but then what we're talking about is legal investigation conducted by a licensed private investigator in the course of a divorce proceeding. Is that correct? Sarah stood up. That's correct, Your Honor. We have every right to investigate assets and conduct that's relevant to this divorce. Judge Chin looked at Tony. Mr. Williams, are you arguing that your wife doesn't have the right to investigate your finances and your relationship with Ms. Patterson during divorce proceedings? Tony stood up, his face red. Your Honor, my wife is being vindictive. She's trying to destroy my reputation and my relationship out of spite. Your reputation? Judge Chen's voice was cold. Let me understand this correctly. You served your pregnant wife with divorce papers at a gender reveal party, and you're concerned about your reputation. That's not. I mean. Sit down, Mr. Williams. Tony sat down so fast his chair squeaked. Judge Chin turned to Sarah. Counselor, do you have evidence of financial impropriety? We do, Your Honor. Sarah opened a folder and pulled out bank statements. Mr. Williams has been hiding assets and using marital funds to support his girlfriend's lifestyle. We have documentation of over $40,000 in concealed accounts and payments. Your Honor, Tony's lawyer interrupted, those payments were legitimate business expenses. Business expenses? Judge Chin looked at the papers Sarah had handed her. RL Properties receives monthly payments of $1,200. What business does Mr. Williams conduct with RL Properties? Tony's lawyer whispered something to Tony, who shook his head frantically. We're waiting for an answer, Judge Chin said. RL Properties it's the company that manages Miss Patterson's apartment building, Tony's lawyer admitted quietly. So Mr. Williams has been paying his girlfriend's rent with marital assets? It's not that simple. It sounds exactly that simple. Judge Chin looked at more papers. I also see evidence of concealed bank accounts, cash withdrawals, and attempts to hide investments. Mr. Williams, did you think your wife wouldn't find out about these activities? Tony stood up again. Your Honor, I was trying to protect my assets. From your wife. The woman you were married to when you acquired these assets. I knew she would try to take everything. Everything that was legally hers as your spouse? Sarah stood up again. Your Honor, there's more. Mr. Williams has been conducting this affair for at least 8 months, possibly longer. We have evidence that the relationship began long before any separation occurred. Judge Chin reviewed more documents. Mr. Williams, is it true that you've been in a romantic relationship with Ms. Patterson for 8 months? Tony looked at his lawyer, who nodded reluctantly. Yes, Your Honor. And during this time, you were living with your pregnant wife? Yes, but. There is no but, Mr. Williams. Motion denied. Not only will I not grant a protective order, but I'm ordering a full financial audit of all accounts controlled by Mr. Williams for the past 12 months. Any further attempts to conceal or move assets will result in contempt charges. Judge Chin looked directly at Tony. Mr. Williams, I suggest you start being honest with this court and with your wife's attorney. Deception does not play well in family court. As we left the courthouse, I felt lighter than I had in months. Tony had been humiliated in front of a judge, and now the court was on our side. That went better than I expected, Sarah said as we walked to her car. Judge Chin saw right through his lies. What happens now? Now we get access to everything. Bank records, investment accounts, credit cards, everything. And Tony knows he can't hide anymore. That afternoon, I was back at Emma's house working on jewelry orders when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Layla? This is Rebecca. I almost dropped the phone. What do you want? I want to talk. Can we meet somewhere? I don't think that's a good idea. Please. There are things you need to know about Tony. Things he hasn't told you. I was quiet for a moment, thinking. Why would you want to help me? Because I think I've made a mistake. A big one. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop on the other side of town, somewhere neither of us would run into anyone we knew. I called Sarah first to let her know what was happening. Be careful, Sarah warned. This could be a trap. Don't say anything that could hurt our case. I won't. But if she has information that could help us, record the conversation if you can. Just don't let her know you're doing it. An hour later, I was sitting across from the woman who had helped destroy my marriage. Up close, Rebecca looked different than she did in her Instagram photos. Tired, nervous, younger than I had expected. Thank you for meeting me, she said, stirring her coffee without drinking it. What do you want to tell me? Rebecca took a deep breath. Tony lied to me about everything. He told me you two were already separated when we started seeing each other. He said you knew about the divorce and that you were fine with it. When did you find out that wasn't true? At the gender reveal party. When I saw the look on your face. She paused, staring at her coffee. That's when I realized he had been lying to me too. So why did you stay with him? Because I was in love with him. Or I thought I was. But after what happened in court today, I started putting pieces together. She pulled out her phone and showed me text messages between her and Tony. Look at these, she said, scrolling through the conversation. He's been telling me that you're crazy, that you've been threatening him, that you're trying to take all his money out of spite. I read the messages, my anger growing. Tony had painted me as some kind of vengeful monster to justify his actions. But that's not the worst part, Rebecca continued. I found out about the other women. Other women? There was someone before me. And I think there might be someone else now. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? Rebecca showed me more photos on her phone. I found these on his computer. Pictures of him with another woman from his office. The timestamps are from last week. I stared at the photos in disbelief. While Tony was telling Rebecca that he loved her while he was fighting me in court for custody of our daughter, he was already cheating on his girlfriend too. Her name is Kelly, Rebecca said. She works in the accounting department at his firm. How long has this been going on? I don't know. But I think Tony has a pattern. He finds women who work with him, tells them whatever they want to hear, and then moves on when he gets bored or finds someone new. I sat back in my chair trying to process everything. Tony wasn't just a cheating husband, he was a serial cheater who manipulated women for his own entertainment. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I realized something today in court. You're not the crazy, vindictive ex-wife he told me you were. You're just a woman who got betrayed by the same man who betrayed me. Rebecca reached into her purse and pulled out a flash drive. This has copies of all the photos, text messages, and emails I could find, including financial records he kept on his personal computer. I took the flash drive, my hands shaking. Why would you give this to me? Because Tony destroyed your life and he's destroying mine too. But you're fighting back. I admire that. What are you going to do now? I'm leaving town. I got a job offer in another state and I think it's time for a fresh start. She stood up to leave, then turned back. Layla? Yeah. I'm sorry. For everything. I should have asked more questions. I should have realized that a man who would cheat on his pregnant wife would probably cheat on me too. After Rebecca left, I sat in my car for 20 minutes staring at the flash drive. Then I called Sarah. You're not going to believe what just happened, I said. That evening, Sarah and I sat in her office going through the contents of Rebecca's flash drive. Financial records that showed even more hidden assets, photos that proved Tony was already cheating on Rebecca, and text messages that showed him manipulating multiple women at the same time. This is incredible, Sarah said. We went from having a strong case to having an unbeatable case. What do we do with all this? We use it to get you everything you deserve. Child support, alimony, your fair share of all assets, and primary custody. What about Tony's job? Sarah smiled. That's where this gets really interesting. His law firm has a strict morality clause for partners. Using company resources for personal affairs, lying to clients, financial impropriety, any of these things could cost him his partnership. Are we going to report him? We don't have to. But we can let him know that we have the evidence to do so. Sometimes the threat is more powerful than the action. As I drove home that night, I thought about how much had changed since that terrible day in my backyard. I had gone from being a victim to being in control. I had built a successful business, gathered evidence of Tony's lies and cheating, and now I had ammunition that could destroy his career if necessary. But the best part wasn't the evidence or the money or even the possibility of revenge. The best part was that I had discovered who I really was when I wasn't trying to please Tony or live up to his expectations. I was stronger than I had ever imagined. And I was just getting started. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. 4 months, I had been reactive, responding to Tony's moves and trying to defend myself. But now I had everything I needed to go on the offense. I called Linda first. I need you to do something for me, I said. I want to know everything about Tony's work situation. Who his clients are, what cases he's working on, who makes decisions about partnerships at his firm. What are you planning? I'm planning to make sure Tony understands that actions have consequences. Next, I called Sarah and asked her to set up a meeting with Tony and his lawyer. Tell them we want to discuss settlement terms. Are you sure? We have them right where we want them. Why give them a chance to negotiate? Because I want to see the look on Tony's face when he realizes how much trouble he's really in. The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday at Sarah's office. I spent the weekend preparing, gathering all the evidence we had collected and organizing it into a presentation that would leave no doubt about Tony's behavior. On Tuesday morning, I dressed carefully in a navy business suit that showed off my growing belly. I wanted Tony to see exactly what he was abandoning his wife and his unborn daughter. Tony and his lawyer arrived 15 minutes late, which was typical. Tony looked even worse than he had in court, like he hadn't been sleeping. His lawyer, Mr. Peterson, looked nervous and kept checking his phone. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Sarah began. My client is interested in discussing settlement terms that would be fair to both parties. Mr. Peterson relaxed slightly. We're certainly open to reasonable discussion. Excellent. Sarah opened her folder and pulled out a settlement proposal. Here's what we're asking for. She slid the paper across the table. Tony's eyes widened as he read it. This is ridiculous, he said. You want 70% of our assets, full custody, and maximum child support? No judge would award this. You're right, I said, speaking for the first time. No judge would award this based on a normal divorce. But this isn't a normal divorce, is it, Tony? Sarah pulled out another folder. Let's review the evidence we've collected, shall we? For the next 30 minutes, Sarah laid out everything. The hidden bank accounts, the payments to Rebecca, the affair that started months before any separation, the attempts to hide assets from the court. Tony's face got redder with each revelation, but he stayed quiet. Mr. Peterson, however, was taking frantic notes. This is all very interesting, Mr. Peterson said finally, but it doesn't change the basic facts of the divorce. We're not done, I interrupted. Sarah pulled out photos from Rebecca's flash drive. Tony and Kelly at dinner, holding hands in the parking garage at his office, kissing in his car. Meet Kelly Richardson, Sarah said. From the accounting department at Richardson and Associates. Tony went pale. How did you? It doesn't matter how we got these, Sarah continued. What matters is that you're having an affair with an employee at your own law firm while fighting your wife in divorce court. Mr. Peterson was staring at the photos like they were radioactive. Tony, you didn't tell me about another woman. It's not what it looks like. It looks like you're cheating on the woman you cheated on your wife with, I said. Which is exactly what it is. Sarah pulled out more documents. Bank records showing that Mr. Williams has been using firm credit cards for personal expenses. Restaurant bills, hotel rooms, gifts for his girlfriends. That's a violation of firm policy, Mr. Peterson said quietly. It's also potentially fraudulent, Sarah added. Using company resources for personal affairs. Tony finally found his voice. You can't prove any misuse of company funds. Actually, we can. Sarah showed him the credit card statements. Dinner at Romano's on March 15th with Rebecca Patterson. Hotel room at the Marriott downtown on March 22nd, also with Ms. Patterson. Jewelry purchase at Tiffany's on April 3rd, and we have photos of Rebecca wearing that exact bracelet. Mr. Peterson was looking at his client like he had never seen him before. Tony, why didn't you tell me about any of this? Because I knew you'd overreact. Overreact. Mr. Peterson stood up. You've been lying to me, to the court, and apparently to everyone else. Do you understand what this does to our case? There's more, I said calmly. Sarah pulled out the final folder. Richardson and Associates has a morality clause in their partnership agreements. Partners are expected to maintain high ethical standards and avoid behavior that could reflect poorly on the firm. She slid a copy of Tony's partnership contract across the table, with the relevant sections highlighted. Having affairs with multiple employees, using company resources for personal matters, lying to clients about availability while conducting personal business, any of these violations could result in termination and loss of partnership. Tony was staring at the contract like it was a death sentence. Which, for his career, it probably was. What do you want? He asked quietly. I want what I asked for in the settlement proposal, I said. 70% of assets, primary custody, maximum child support, and alimony. And if I don't agree? Sarah smiled. Then we go to trial, where all of this evidence becomes public record. Your colleagues will see it, your clients will see it, and the partners at your firm will see it. You're blackmailing me. We're presenting you with options, Sarah corrected. You can settle fairly and quietly, or you can fight us and have your career destroyed in the process. Mr. Peterson was whispering urgently to Tony, who kept shaking his head and looking panicked. We need time to consider this, Mr. Peterson said finally. You have until Friday, Sarah replied. After that, we file our evidence with the court and send copies to the partners at Richardson and Associates. As they left, Tony turned back to look at me one more time. I never meant for it to happen this way, Layla. Yes, you did, I replied. You planned every bit of this. The only thing you didn't plan for was me fighting back. After they left, Sarah and I sat in her office reviewing what had just happened. How do you think they'll respond? I asked. They'll settle. Tony can't afford to have this go public. His career would be over. Good. Sarah looked at me carefully. Are you sure you want to do this? Once we send that evidence to his firm, there's no going back. Tony will lose everything. I thought about that day in my backyard, about the months of lies and manipulation, about the baby growing inside me who deserved better than a father who would abandon his family for his own selfish desires. He made his choices, I said. Now he gets to live with the consequences. That evening, I was at Emma's house working on jewelry orders when my phone started ringing. Tony called 17 times in 2 hours. I didn't answer any of the calls, but I saved every voicemail. The messages went from angry to desperate to pleading. He promised to make everything right, to give me whatever I wanted, to be a better husband and father. But it was too late for promises. On Thursday night, Mr. Peterson called Sarah to accept our settlement terms. Tony would give me 70% of all marital assets. I would have primary custody of our daughter, and he would pay maximum child support and alimony. He also wants to know if you'll agree not to send the evidence to his firm, Sarah told me. I thought about it for a moment. Tony was giving me everything I had asked for financially, but there was still the matter of justice. Tell him I'll consider it, I said, but only if he signs an additional agreement. What kind of agreement? I want him to admit in writing that he committed adultery, that he hid assets, and that he lied to the court. I want a full confession that can be used against him if he ever tries to change the custody arrangement or reduce support payments. Sarah laughed. You want him to sign his own confession? I want him to understand that I'll always have evidence of who he really is. If he ever tries to hurt me or my daughter again, I can destroy him. On Friday afternoon, Tony signed every document we put in front of him. The divorce settlement, the custody agreement, the child support order, and the confession letter that detailed every lie he had told and every law he had broken. As he signed the last paper, his hand was shaking. Are you going to send the evidence to my firm? he asked quietly. I looked at him for a long moment, this man who had been my husband, who had promised to love and protect me, who had instead chosen to betray and humiliate me. Not today, I said finally. But I'll always have it. Remember that. As Tony and his lawyer left Sarah's office for the last time, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not happiness, not satisfaction, but peace. I had won. Not just the divorce, but something more important. I had won back my self-respect, my independence, and my future. Now I just had to figure out what to do with it. 2 weeks after Tony signed the settlement agreement, I was sitting in a bank office that felt more luxurious than most people's living rooms. The manager, Mrs. Rodriguez, was explaining my new financial situation with the kind of respect I hadn't experienced in years. So to summarize, she said, reviewing the documents spread across her mahogany desk, you'll be receiving $420,000 from the asset division, plus monthly child support of $3,000 and alimony of $2,000. I nodded, still trying to process the numbers. After years of Tony controlling every aspect of our finances, I was about to become financially independent in a way I had never imagined. We'll also be setting up a trust fund for your daughter, Mrs. Rodriguez continued, with the $50,000 specified in the settlement agreement. And my business accounts? Those will be transferred to your name only. Based on your recent income statements, you're generating significant revenue. Have you considered expanding? I'd been thinking about that a lot lately. My jewelry business had grown beyond my wildest expectations, and I was already getting inquiries from boutiques wanting to carry my pieces. I think I'm ready to take it to the next level, I said. After leaving the bank, I drove to the address Emma had given me, a small storefront in the arts district that was available for lease. It was perfect for a jewelry studio and boutique, with large windows that would showcase my work and enough space in the back for a workshop. The landlord, Mr. Kim, was a friendly man who seemed excited about having an artist in his building. The previous tenant was a pottery studio, he explained as we walked through the space. The electrical is already set up for equipment, and there's good natural light. I could picture it perfectly. Display cases along the walls, a workbench by the window, maybe even space for jewelry making classes. My own business, my own space, my own success. I'll take it, I said. That evening I was at Emma's house making dinner when my phone rang. It was Linda, the private investigator. I have some interesting news, she said. Remember how you asked me to keep an eye on Tony's situation at work? What happened? Well, it seems someone at Richardson and Associates found out about his personal problems anyway. My heart skipped. What do you mean? Kelly Richardson, the woman he was having an affair with, she's the daughter of one of the senior partners. Her father found out about the relationship and he's not happy. I sat down heavily in Emma's kitchen chair. Oh no. Gets better. Apparently Kelly told her father that Tony had been telling her he was divorced. When her father found out Tony was still married and going through divorce proceedings, he confronted Tony directly. What happened? Tony's been suspended pending an internal investigation. They're reviewing all his cases and looking into his use of company resources. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me was satisfied that Tony was facing consequences for his actions, but another part of me, the part that had loved him for 5 years, felt sorry for him. There's more, Linda continued. Kelly Richardson has filed a complaint with HR claiming that Tony lied to her about his marital status and used his position to manipulate her into a relationship. Can she do that? She can, and she did. Sexual harassment policies at most firms cover relationships where one person has power over another or where deception is involved. After I hung up with Linda, I called Sarah to fill her in on what was happening. This complicates things, Sarah said. If Tony loses his job, he won't be able to make the support payments we agreed to. Can he change the agreement? He can try, but the settlement is already signed and filed with the court. He'd have to prove a significant change in circumstances, and losing his job due to his own misconduct probably won't qualify. So what happens if he can't pay? Then we go back to court and ask them to enforce the agreement. We might be able to get his assets seized or garnish any income he does have. The next morning I got a call from an unknown number. Layla? It's Tony. His voice sounded terrible, hoarse and defeated. What do you want? I need to ask you for a favor. I almost laughed. A favor? Are you serious? I'm going to lose my job. The partners are meeting next week to decide whether to terminate my partnership. That's not my problem, Tony. But if I lose my job, I won't be able to make the payments we agreed to. Can we modify the settlement? No. Please, Layla. I know I messed up, but I'm still going to be our daughter's father. If I lose everything, it won't be good for her either. I was quiet for a moment, thinking. Tony was right that our daughter would be affected if he couldn't provide for her, but he was also the one who had created this situation. You should have thought about that before you decided to have affairs with multiple women at your workplace, I said finally. I know I made mistakes. Mistakes? Tony, you planned to destroy our marriage for months. You hid money, you lied to me, you lied to the court, and you used company resources to support your girlfriends. Those weren't mistakes, they were choices. What if I could get another job? What if I could prove that I can still make the payments? Then you should focus on doing that instead of asking me to let you out of your responsibilities. I hung up and immediately called Sarah. Tony just called asking to modify the settlement. I told her. Absolutely not. He signed that agreement knowing full well what his situation was. If he loses his job because of his own actions, that's not grounds for modification. What if he really can't pay? Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But I suspect Tony has more resources than he's letting on. Remember, we found evidence of hidden assets. He might have money stashed away that we haven't discovered yet. That afternoon, I was setting up my new studio space when Emma came by with coffee and sandwiches. You look happy, she said, watching me arrange jewelry displays. I'm happy. For the first time in months, I'm doing something that's completely mine. Any regrets about Tony? I thought about that. I regret that our daughter won't have an intact family. I regret that I wasted 5 years of my life with someone who didn't respect me. But do I regret fighting for what I deserved? No. Emma nodded. You know what I'm proud of? What? You didn't just survive what Tony did to you. You used it to become stronger and more successful than you ever were when you were married to him. She was right. 6 months ago, I was a housewife whose biggest decision was what to make for dinner. Now I was a business owner with financial independence and a bright future ahead of me. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Congratulations on your new studio. You deserve all the success in the world. Rebecca. I showed the text to Emma, who raised her eyebrows. She's still keeping tabs on you? I think she's just trying to make peace with what happened. Are you going to respond? I thought about it for a moment, then typed back. Thank you. I hope you're finding happiness in your new life too. It felt good to respond with kindness instead of anger. Rebecca had been part of the destruction of my marriage, but she had also been manipulated by Tony just like I had been. That evening, as I worked on inventory for my new studio, I got another call from Tony. They fired me, he said without preamble. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. The partners voted unanimously to terminate my partnership. They're also considering reporting me to the State Bar Association. Tony, I'm not calling to ask for sympathy. I'm calling to tell you that I'm going to find another job and I'm going to honor our agreement. Whatever it takes. I was surprised by the determination in his voice. Okay, I said. I know you don't believe me and I know I don't deserve your trust. But our daughter deserves a father who keeps his promises. I'm going to be that father, even if it takes me years to make up for what I've done. After he hung up, I sat in my new studio surrounded by the jewelry I had created with my own hands, thinking about second chances and new beginnings. Tony had destroyed our marriage and betrayed our family, but maybe just maybe he could still learn to be a decent father. For our daughter's sake, I hoped he would. But either way, I knew I would be fine. I had built something beautiful out of the wreckage of my old life, and I was just getting started. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I was putting the finishing touches on my jewelry studio when I got a call that changed everything. It was Janet Morrison, the president of the local Chamber of Commerce. Layla, we'd love to feature your business in our annual showcase, she said. We're highlighting successful women entrepreneurs, and your story is exactly what we're looking for. What would that involve? A presentation at our monthly dinner meeting, a feature in our newsletter, and maybe an interview with the local newspaper. It's great publicity. I had been avoiding publicity, wanting to keep my new life private. But my business was growing so fast that I needed more visibility to keep up with demand. When is the presentation? Next Thursday evening. About 200 people usually attend: business owners, community leaders, local politicians. It's a great networking opportunity. After I agreed to participate, Janet mentioned something that made my stomach drop. Oh, and you'll be pleased to know that Tony Williams will be presenting too. He's starting a new consulting business and asked to be included in the showcase. I almost dropped the phone. Tony will be there? Yes, isn't that wonderful? It's so nice when divorced couples can still support each other's business endeavors. After I hung up, I sat in my studio staring at the wall. Tony was going to be at the same event, presenting his new business to the same audience that would hear about my success. The man who had tried to destroy me would be sharing a stage with me while I talked about overcoming adversity. The irony was too perfect to ignore. I called Sarah immediately. "This could be a problem," she said. "You don't want to do anything that could be seen as harassment or vindictive." "I'm not planning to harass anyone. I'm just going to tell my story honestly. Your story involves his affair and financial deception. If you talk about that publicly, it's all a matter of public record now. The divorce proceedings, the settlement, everything. I'm not revealing secrets, I'm just sharing my experience." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "What are you really planning, Layla?" "I'm planning to show everyone in this community exactly what kind of man Tony Williams is." Over the next week, I prepared my presentation carefully. I wasn't going to mention Tony by name or go into explicit details about his behavior. I didn't need to. I would simply tell the story of how I built my business after my marriage ended, and let people draw their own conclusions. The night of the showcase, I arrived at the hotel ballroom early to set up my jewelry display. The room was elegant, with round tables set for dinner and a stage at the front with a podium and projection screen. Tony arrived just as I was finishing my setup. He looked different, older, more tired, wearing a suit that wasn't quite as expensive as the ones he used to wear. When he saw me, he stopped walking for a moment, then approached my table. "Layla, you look..." He paused, searching for words. "You look amazing." I was 8.5 months pregnant now, and I did look good. Pregnancy had given me a glow that complemented the confidence I had gained over the past year. "Thank you," I said simply. "I heard about your business success. Congratulations. How's your consulting firm doing?" Tony's smile faltered slightly. "It's a work in progress. Building a new client base takes time." What he didn't say, but what I knew from Linda's continued monitoring, was that Tony was struggling financially. His reputation in the legal community had been damaged by the circumstances of his termination, and potential clients were wary of hiring someone who had been fired for ethical violations. "I'm sure you'll figure it out," I said. "You always were good at reinventing yourself." Tony winced at the subtle dig, but before he could respond, Janet Morrison approached our table. "Layla, Tony, how wonderful to see you both. Are you excited about your presentations?" "Very much so," I said. "Tony, you're presenting first, then Layla. We thought it would be nice to have you both represent the entrepreneurial spirit in our community." As Janet walked away, Tony looked at me nervously. "What are you planning to say?" he asked. "I'm going to tell my story." "What story?" "The story of how I built a successful business after my life fell apart. The story of finding strength I didn't know I had. The story of starting over when everything seemed hopeless." Tony's face went pale. "Layla, please don't." "Don't what?" "Don't tell the truth. Don't make this about our divorce. These people don't need to know our personal business. Our personal business became public record when you decided to serve me divorce papers at our gender reveal party." Before Tony could respond, the program began. We took our seats at opposite ends of the room as Janet introduced the evening's theme: Rising from Adversity, Stories of Entrepreneurial Success. Tony was called to the stage first. He walked to the podium with his usual confidence, but I could see the nervousness in the way he adjusted his tie and cleared his throat. "Good evening," he began. "I'm here to talk about my new consulting firm, Williams Strategic Solutions. After spending 10 years in corporate law, I decided to branch out on my own and help small businesses navigate legal and regulatory challenges." His presentation was polished and professional, focusing on his experience and the services his company offered. He talked about the challenges of starting a new business and the importance of perseverance in the face of setbacks. He didn't mention why he had left his previous position, of course. He made it sound like starting his own firm had been a planned career move rather than a consequence of being fired for misconduct. The audience seemed receptive, asking questions about his services and nodding approvingly at his business philosophy. Tony was charming and articulate, the same qualities that had attracted me to him years ago. Then it was my turn. I walked to the podium, my pregnant belly leading the way, and looked out at the 200 faces staring back at me. I recognized many of them lawyers, business owners, community leaders. Some of them probably knew Tony personally or professionally. "Good evening," I began. "My name is Layla Foster, and I'm here to talk about Luna Jewelry Studio." I clicked to my first slide, which showed a photo of my beautiful studio space. 8 months ago, I was a housewife with no income, no business experience, and no idea how I was going to support myself and my unborn daughter. Today, I'm the owner of a thriving jewelry business that generates 6 figures in annual revenue. I could see people leaning forward, interested in the dramatic transformation I was describing. The journey from housewife to entrepreneur wasn't planned. It was born out of necessity when my life completely fell apart in the most public way possible. I clicked to the next slide, which showed a timeline of my business growth over the past 8 months. You see, I found myself suddenly single and pregnant, facing the prospect of rebuilding my entire life from scratch. I had given up my previous business interests to support my husband's career, and I had no independent income or assets. I could see Tony shifting uncomfortably in his seat. But sometimes the worst moments in our lives become the catalyst for the best changes. When I was forced to become self-reliant, I discovered strengths I never knew I had. I told the story of starting my jewelry business in Emma's spare bedroom, working late into the night while dealing with the stress of divorce proceedings. I talked about the challenges of building a brand from nothing, the joy of seeing my first online sales, the excitement of expanding into a physical studio space. The most important lesson I learned is that you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. When someone you trust betrays that trust, when your carefully planned future disappears overnight, when you're facing financial uncertainty and emotional devastation, you have a choice. I clicked to a slide showing photos of my jewelry pieces. You can let the betrayal define you, or you can use it as fuel to build something better than what you had before. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. I chose to build, not just a business but a new version of myself. A version that doesn't depend on anyone else for financial security or self-worth. A version that my daughter can be proud of. I clicked to my final slide, which showed a photo of my studio's grand opening. Luna Jewelry Studio isn't just a business, it's proof that women can rise from the ashes of their worst moments and create something beautiful. It's proof that betrayal doesn't have to be the end of your story. It can be the beginning of your greatest chapter. The applause was thunderous. People were standing, smiling, some wiping away tears. I looked out at the audience and saw recognition in many faces. They understood exactly what story I had told, even without mentioning Tony by name. As I walked back to my seat, I glanced at Tony. His face was red, his jaw clenched, his hands gripping the edge of the table. Everyone in that room now knew that his planned career move was actually the result of destroying his marriage and losing his job due to his own misconduct. During the networking portion of the evening, I was surrounded by people wanting to hear more about my business and my story. Business cards were exchanged, orders were placed, and several women shared their own stories of overcoming adversity. Tony, meanwhile, stood alone by the bar, his earlier confidence completely deflated. A few people approached him, but the conversations were brief and uncomfortable. Word was already spreading about who the betraying husband in my story really was. As the evening wound down, Janet Morrison approached me with a huge smile. "Layla, that was incredible. I've never seen such a response to a presentation. The newspaper wants to do a feature story, and I've already had 3 requests for you to speak at other events. I'm glad people found it helpful." Helpful. Was inspiring. You've shown everyone what real strength looks like. As I was packing up my jewelry display, Tony approached one last time. "That was quite a performance," he said, his voice tight with anger. "It wasn't a performance. It was my truth. You humiliated me in front of the entire business community. I told my story. If you feel humiliated by it, maybe you should think about why that is." Tony looked around the nearly empty ballroom, then back at me. "You got what you wanted, Layla. The money, the custody, the business success. Wasn't that enough?" I looked at this man who had once been my husband, who had promised to love and protect me, who had instead chosen to destroy our family for his own selfish desires. "No, Tony. It wasn't enough. Because getting what I deserved was never just about the money or the custody. It was about making sure that everyone knows who you really are." "And who am I?" "You're a man who serves divorce papers to his pregnant wife at their gender reveal party. You're a man who lies, cheats, and steals to get what he wants. You're a man who destroys everything good in his life because he thinks he deserves better than what he has." Tony's face was a mixture of anger and defeat. "I hope you're happy." "I am happy," I said simply. "For the first time in years, I'm genuinely happy. And that has nothing to do with you." As Tony walked away, I finished packing my display and headed out to the parking lot. Emma was waiting by my car, having watched the entire presentation from the back of the room. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like I can finally breathe," I said. "Like the last chapter of my old life is finally closed." "And what's the first chapter of your new life going to be?" I looked back at the hotel where I had just shared my story with 200 people, where I had reclaimed my narrative and shown everyone exactly what I was capable of. I don't know yet, I said. But I can't wait to find out. 1 week after the Chamber of Commerce presentation, I was in my studio putting the finishing touches on a custom engagement ring when my phone rang. It was Dr. Martinez, my obstetrician. "Layla, I need you to come in today. We need to discuss your latest test results." Something in her voice made my stomach clench. "Is everything okay with the baby?" "The baby is fine, but there are some complications we need to address. Can you be here in an hour?" I called Emma to drive me to the appointment, my mind racing through all the possible things that could be wrong. At 36 weeks pregnant, I was so close to meeting my daughter that the thought of complications now was terrifying. Dr. Martinez's face was serious as she reviewed my chart. "Layla, your blood pressure has been climbing steadily over the past month, and your latest labs show protein in your urine. You're developing preeclampsia." "What does that mean?" "It means we need to deliver your baby soon. Preeclampsia can be dangerous for both you and the baby if we don't act quickly." "How soon?" "We're going to induce labor tonight." The world seemed to stop spinning. "Tonight? But I'm not ready. The baby's lungs are mature enough for delivery, and waiting longer could put you both at risk." "I'm sorry, but we don't have a choice." Emma grabbed my hand as Dr. Martinez explained the induction process and the potential complications. Everything was happening so fast that I could barely process the information. "Is there anyone you want to call?" Dr. Martinez asked. "The father, maybe?" I thought about Tony, probably sitting in his empty apartment trying to figure out how to rebuild his career after the public humiliation at the Chamber of Commerce event. "Yes," I said finally. "He should know." 3 hours later, I was in a hospital bed with IVs in my arm and monitors tracking my baby's heartbeat. Emma sat beside me, holding my hand and trying to distract me with stories about her day. Tony arrived just as the nurse was checking my cervix for the 3rd time. "How is she?" he asked Emma, his voice full of genuine concern. "Scared," Emma replied honestly. "But she's strong." Tony approached my bed slowly, like he was afraid I might ask him to leave. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi." "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm about to have a baby whether I'm ready or not." Tony pulled up a chair on the other side of my bed. "Is there anything I can do?" "Just be here. For her." For the next 8 hours, Tony stayed by my side as I labored to bring our daughter into the world. He held my hand during contractions, brought me ice chips when my mouth was dry, and whispered encouragement when the pain became overwhelming. It was strange having him there. For those hours in the hospital room, we weren't the divorced couple who had torn each other apart in court. We were just two people about to become parents, focused on the miracle that was about to happen. Luna Grace Foster was born at 6:23 a.m., weighing 5 pounds 8 ounces. She was perfect, tiny but healthy, with a head full of dark hair and her father's brown eyes. As the doctor placed her on my chest, I started crying. Not from pain or exhaustion but from pure joy. After months of stress and conflict and uncertainty, I was finally holding my daughter. "She's beautiful," Tony whispered, tears streaming down his face. "She's absolutely perfect." For a moment, seeing him look at our daughter with such love and wonder, I remembered why I had fallen in love with him in the first place. Before the lies and the cheating and the betrayal, he had been a good man. Maybe he could still be a good father. But that moment of hope was shattered an hour later when the nurse brought me a stack of papers to sign. "Birth certificate," she explained. "We need both parents to sign." Tony looked at the papers, then at me. "Layla, about the name." "What about it?" "Luna Grace Foster." "You're not giving her my last name?" "No. But she's my daughter too." "She's your daughter, but she's not your wife." "I kept my maiden name and so will she." Tony's face darkened. "That's not fair. She should have her father's name." "Like you were fair when you served me divorce papers at our gender reveal party?" "That's different." "No, it's not. You made choices, Tony. This is one of mine." The nurse looked uncomfortable as the tension in the room escalated. "Maybe we should discuss this later," she suggested. "There's nothing to discuss," I said firmly. "My daughter's name is Luna Grace Foster." Tony stood up abruptly. "Fine. But don't expect me to just accept this. I don't expect anything from you anymore." After Tony left, Emma came back into the room and sat down beside my bed. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I'm perfect," I said, looking down at Luna sleeping peacefully in my arms. "We're both perfect. What are you going to do about Tony?" "What I've been doing. Protect my daughter and build our life." The next day, as I was preparing to take Luna home, Tony returned with his lawyer, Mr. Peterson. "Layla, we need to discuss custody arrangements," Mr. Peterson said. "We already discussed custody. It's in the divorce agreement. The circumstances have changed now that the baby is born. Mr. Williams would like to request additional visitation time." I looked at Tony, who couldn't meet my eyes. "Additional time? You haven't even held her yet. I wanted to respect your recovery time. You wanted to fight about her last name instead of bonding with your daughter." Sarah arrived just as the conversation was getting heated. She had been prepared for this, Tony trying to renegotiate custody now that Luna was actually here. "Any changes to the custody arrangement would need to go through the court," Sarah told Mr. Peterson. "And given Mr. Williams' recent challenges, I don't think a judge would be receptive to expanding his rights." "What challenges?" Tony demanded. Sarah pulled out a folder. "Loss of employment due to misconduct, public humiliation at a business event, difficulty finding new employment, and attempting to change legal agreements after signing them." "Should I continue?" Tony's face went red. "That business event was a setup. Layla deliberately humiliated me." Layla told her story at a business presentation. "If you felt humiliated by her success story, that says more about your actions than hers." Mr. Peterson whispered something to Tony, who shook his head angrily. "This isn't over," Tony said as they prepared to leave. "Yes, it is," I replied, adjusting Luna's blanket. "This is exactly where it ends. You get the visitation we agreed to, nothing more. And if you try to cause problems, remember that I still have all that evidence we discussed." After they left, I sat in the hospital bed holding my daughter and thinking about the future. Tony would always be part of our lives because he was Luna's father, but he would never again have the power to hurt us. I had won more than a divorce settlement. I had won my freedom, my independence, and most importantly, the chance to raise my daughter in a home filled with love and respect instead of lies and manipulation. As I carried Luna out of the hospital and into the bright morning sunshine, I knew that our story was just beginning. And this time I would be the one writing it. 6 months after Luna was born, I was standing in my expanded jewelry studio watching my assistant, Maria, help a customer choose a custom engagement ring. The business had grown beyond my wildest dreams, with orders coming in from across the country and a waiting list for custom pieces that stretched 3 months out. "Mrs. Foster?" Maria called. "The photographer is here for the magazine shoot." I still wasn't used to being called Mrs. Foster instead of Mrs. Williams, but I loved the sound of it. It represented everything I had built on my own, without Tony's name or influence. The photographer was from a national women's magazine that was doing a feature story on successful single mothers. My story, rising from betrayal to business success while raising a baby, had caught their attention after the local newspaper article went viral. "Where would you like to set up?" the photographer asked, looking around the beautiful studio space. "Let's start at the workbench," I suggested. That's where everything began. As the photographer set up his equipment, I thought about how much had changed in the past year. The scared, pregnant woman who had been served divorce papers in her backyard was gone. In her place was a confident business owner, a devoted mother, and a woman who knew exactly what she was worth. Luna gurgled happily in her bouncer, reaching for the sparkly crystals I kept within her view. At 6 months old, she was already showing signs of inherited creativity, always fascinated by colors and textures and shiny objects. "Tell me about the moment you decided to start this business," the photographer said, snapping candid shots as I worked on a bracelet. "I was 8 months pregnant, recently divorced, and living in my sister's spare bedroom," I began. "I needed something to do with my hands while I waited for my lawyer to call with updates on my case. So I started making jewelry. Did you ever imagine it would become this successful?" I looked around the studio, the gleaming display cases, the organized workspace, the wall covered with photos of happy customers wearing my pieces. Honestly? No. I thought I was just keeping myself busy. But it turns out that when you're forced to depend on yourself, you discover capabilities you never knew you had. The interview continued for an hour, covering everything from my design process to my plans for expansion. The photographer took dozens of shots of me working, holding Luna, standing in front of the studio's large windows with the afternoon light streaming in. Just as we were finishing, the door chimed and Tony walked in. He looked different than he had at the hospital 6 months ago. Healthier, more put together, wearing a new suit that actually fit properly. His consulting business was apparently doing better, based on what I'd heard through mutual acquaintances. "I'm sorry," he said, noticing the camera equipment. "I didn't realize you were busy. I can come back." "It's fine," I said. "We were just finishing up." The photographer and magazine writer packed up their equipment while Tony waited awkwardly by the door. He had started coming by the studio once a week to pick up Luna for his visitation time, and these handoffs had become routine and civil. "How did the interview go?" he asked after the magazine crew left. "Good. They're featuring the business in their success stories section." That's really great, Layla. You deserve the recognition." I studied his face, looking for signs of the man who had betrayed me so completely. He seemed genuine, but I had learned not to trust appearances when it came to Tony. "How's Luna been this week?" he asked, walking over to where she was playing with a set of colorful rings. "Perfect as always. She's starting to sit up on her own." Tony's face lit up as he picked up his daughter. Luna smiled at him, reaching for his face with her tiny hands. Whatever else Tony had done wrong, he was trying to be a good father. "I wanted to talk to you about something," he said, settling Luna against his shoulder. "What?" "I've been thinking about what you said at the hospital. About choices and consequences." I waited, not sure where this was going. "You were right. About everything. I made terrible choices, and I hurt you in ways that I can never undo." "Okay. I know I can't change what I did, and I know you'll never forgive me. But I want you to know that I'm grateful." "Grateful?" "For Luna, obviously. But also for the way you handled everything. You could have destroyed me completely, but you didn't." I thought about that. I had certainly had the power to destroy Tony's career and reputation entirely. The evidence Sarah and Linda had gathered could have been used much more aggressively. "I didn't do it for you," I said finally. "I did it for Luna. She deserves to have a father she can be proud of, even if it takes you years to become that man." Tony nodded, his eyes bright with what looked like unshed tears. "I'm trying to be better. For her and for myself." "I know. I can see it." We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Luna grab at the sunbeams streaming through the window. "There's something else," Tony said. "Rebecca called me last week." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh." "She wanted to apologize. For everything. She said she realized how badly she had messed up and wanted to make amends." "What did you tell her?" "I told her that she didn't owe me an apology. We both made choices and we both have to live with them." "That's very mature of you." I also told her that if she really wanted to make amends, she should donate to a women's shelter or do something to help other women who are going through what you went through. I was surprised by this response. The old Tony would have been focused entirely on his own feelings and needs. "What did she say?" "She's actually working with a nonprofit now that helps women rebuild their lives after divorce. She said your story inspired her to do something meaningful with her guilt." I didn't know how to feel about that. Rebecca had been part of destroying my marriage, but if she was now helping other women in similar situations, maybe something good had come from the whole mess. "That's unexpected," I said. "People can change, Layla. I'm hoping I can prove that to you someday." After Tony left with Luna for his afternoon visit, I sat in my studio office going through the orders that had come in that day. 37 pieces, ranging from simple earrings to elaborate custom necklaces. The waiting list for custom work was now 4 months long. My phone rang and I was surprised to see Sarah's name on the caller ID. "Congratulations on the magazine feature," she said. "I saw the photographer leaving your studio." "Thanks. It still feels surreal." "You've earned every bit of success you're getting. But that's not why I'm calling." "What's up?" "I have some interesting news about Tony's old law firm." "Oh. Remember Kelly Richardson, the partner's daughter he was having an affair with? What about her?" "She filed a lawsuit against Richardson and Associates for sexual harassment and creating a hostile work environment." I sat up straighter. "Really?" "She's claiming that the firm knew about Tony's pattern of behavior with female employees and failed to take action to prevent it." "Is that true?" "Apparently there were complaints about Tony's conduct going back several years. The firm just swept them under the rug because he was a good earner." I thought about all the women who might have been harassed or manipulated by Tony over the years, all the complaints that were ignored because he brought in money for the firm. "What does this mean?" "It means Richardson and Associates is about to pay a very large settlement, and it means that your decision to document everything and build a case against Tony was even smarter than we thought." "Why?" "Because Kelly's lawyers want to interview you. Your evidence of Tony's behavior patterns could be crucial to her case." I thought about it for a moment. Helping Kelly's case would mean revisiting all the pain and betrayal of my divorce, but it would also mean helping other women who had been victimized by Tony's behavior. "I'll do it," I said. "Are you sure? It might bring up some difficult memories." "I'm sure. If my experience can help other women get justice, then it's worth it." That evening, I was at home feeding Luna when Emma came over with takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant. "You look happy," she said, settling down on my couch with her container of pad Thai. "I'm happy. Really, genuinely happy. Even with all the Tony drama? There's no Tony drama anymore. He's being a decent father, he's trying to rebuild his life, and he's finally taking responsibility for his actions. And how do you feel about that?" I thought about it while Luna finished her bottle. I feel peaceful. Like I can finally close that chapter and focus entirely on our future. Our future? Luna's and mine. Maybe Maria's too. I'm thinking about making her a partner in the business. Emma smiled. "You've really found your place in the world, haven't you?" "I found my strength. And it turns out that was the only thing I was really missing." Later that night, after Luna was asleep and Emma had gone home, I sat in my living room looking at the photos the magazine photographer had taken. In every single picture, I looked confident, successful, and genuinely content. A year ago, I wouldn't have recognized this version of myself. The woman in these photos was someone who knew her worth, who had built something beautiful from nothing, who was raising a daughter to be strong and independent. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Rebecca. "I saw the article about your magazine feature. I wanted you to know how proud I am of what you've accomplished. You turned the worst thing that ever happened to you into something incredible. Thank you for showing me that it's possible to rebuild after making terrible mistakes." I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, "Thank you. I hope you're finding your own path to rebuilding." "I am. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure other women don't go through what you went through." I smiled, thinking about how strange life could be. The woman who had helped destroy my marriage was now dedicated to helping other women rebuild theirs. As I got ready for bed, I caught sight of myself in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me was someone I was proud to be. Strong, independent, successful, and most importantly, genuinely happy. Tony had served me divorce papers at our gender reveal party, thinking he was ending my story. Instead, he had given me the chance to write a new one. A better one. And this new story was just beginning. I walked into Luna's nursery and watched her sleep, her tiny chest rising and falling peacefully. Tomorrow would bring new orders for the business, new opportunities for growth, new adventures for both of us. Tony had tried to break me, but instead he had freed me to become the woman I was always meant to be. The woman who could build a business with her own hands, raise a daughter on her own terms, and create a life filled with purpose and joy. The woman who had learned that the best revenge isn't destroying the person who hurt you. The best revenge is becoming so successful, so happy, and so complete that their betrayal becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. I had won. Not just the divorce, not just the custody battle, not just the financial settlement. I had won my life back. And that victory would last forever.